You're listening to The Other 50%, a history of Hollywood. I'm Julie Harris Walker. This is the podcast where I talk to successful women in entertainment and hear their stories. For this episode, I got to speak with Nicole Feenstra. Nicole is an actor who actually wrote and produced her own web series called The Broken Hearts Division. We did this interview as a simultaneous Facebook and Instagram live video a few months ago. You can watch the whole interview on YouTube under The Other 50%, a history of Hollywood. And you can find us at theother50%.com for added features, photos, show notes, merchandise. I think you should buy travel mugs for your whole office for Christmas. You can also listen on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Podbay, and now on YouTube. So please subscribe and leave a review wherever you listen. And since podcasting is a word-of-mouth business, please tell all your friends. I have another podcast called The Other 50%, a history of tech. You can find it on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, or on the Other 50% website. And that is where I talk to successful women in tech and hear their stories. Okay, here's Nicole. What do you do?
I am a producer first, and a writer and an actor.
You're all the things.
Yeah.
Are you a director also?
No, but that's in the future.
Okay.
Yeah.
She can do anything, obviously.
I've sold advertising for many years, so I can put up with a lot.
Okay, well, let's go back to the beginning.
Okay.
What did you want to be when you were a kid?
Full-on actor. Just wanted to be on the stage and do theater. And
Did you do it in school?
I did.
What shows did you do in high school?
I actually worked on a play with Horton Foote, who's a Pulitzer Prize-winning author and hugely amazing. He did a play called Trip to Bountiful, and just an amazing author. And so working with him was sort of my first foray into like working with content fresh. Working with a playwright while he was developing a play that I was in.
While you were in high school? Mm-hmm. Was it at your high school?
No, it was at a regional theater called the Stages Rep, which is in Houston, Texas, where I'm from.
That's where you grew up?
Yeah.
So that's cool. So you got the bug early.
I did. I'm an only child, so I had a lot of stories with like stuffed animals. I had hundreds of stuffed animals. They all had performances. And I should have known that I was a producer early on because I have a very distinct memory of having three of my girlfriends. We must have been like third grade, and there was a performance for Valentine's Day, and I had them all like working on cutting out hearts because we were going to be the heart queen and her princess like crew.
Oh well, sure.
Yeah, so I was already kind of producing things in third grade.
Bossing people in a good way.
Yeah, I think they liked it. I think I was a fair queen.
My friends and I did that growing up. Sarah, Jen, if you're watching this, we would do every year a scene from Our Hearts Were Young and Gay from way back in the day, and then we would try to charge all our family members a dime. And none of them would ever pay. And we'd get outraged. We're like, we have worked so hard on our art. Yeah, they weren't having it.
No.
Okay, so after high school, did you go to school for acting?
I did. I went to USC in the BFA program. Mm-hmm. And so I did crazy plays. I was doing Frank Wedekind, which was like a German expressionistic play, and which was Spring Awakening, which ended up becoming a musical on Broadway. And
my kid is doing Spring Awakening as the play right now.
Wow. It's intense.
Yeah.
It's no joke. Like, Germans are crazy. Like, they're not crazy in a bad way, but kind of like it's sort of weird, dark.
Apologies to Germans.
We love Germans. I'm Dutch, so it's like, we're all kind of, we keep our trains running on time. We like to drink, and we like keep things organized.
It all works out.
Yeah. So, I did a lot of sort of expressionistic plays. I did I did a Jean Genet play called The Balcony. So a lot of like expressionistic, kind of pushing the boundary type stuff that I was not used to going to an all-girls Catholic school in Houston.
Yeah, that was a whole different experience, going to college in the big city.
Oh, yeah. I mean, boys, I was like, oh, my gosh, this is heaven on a stick, I was like in a dorm with boys and girls. I was like, this is so much fun.
I'm a grown-up now.
I'm so grown up. There's boys. They're like right across the hall.
Okay, so after college, you stayed in LA, I'm guessing?
I did. I ended up going back and doing a production of, a Mamet play. I'm trying to remember the play.
Mammoth.
Yeah, it's the Hollywood one where the two producers and the secretary, and I can't believe I'm like totally blanking on
Okay,
this.
that sounds like you're describing the producers.
Yeah, pretty much. It is the producers, except it's Mammoth, so it's totally misogynistic and amazing dialogue. And it was it's so interesting that we're having this conversation about just men in general, because that was actually a production where it's such great. I mean, Mammoth is just, I love his writing. And it moves, and it's like anything that has movement in it, Sorkin or David E. Kelly or, Mammoth, I just am immediately drawn to. Just
It's all in the words.
Yeah.
You really just have to say them.
Yeah. I mean, it's so potent. And, but I did have a situation where the director had said, let's, at the end of the first act, my character basically is sort of appealing to this guy in a more sexual way, and so at the end of the first act, she sort of my top was supposed to drop, but the lights were going to drop. So we had coordinated this very specifically where. As the lights fell, so it was
at the same time.
At the same time,
respectfully,
and with intrigue, leaving something to the
art.
imagination. Yeah.
What actually happened?
Well, it's funny you should mention that. I opening night, I'm dropping my shirt and the lights don't go down.
Huh.
And I was like, what is happening? And I'm just standing there, sort of quasi-naked with the lights up. And so after opening night, I go to the lighting guy, and I'm like, what happened?
Dude.
And he's like, oh, yeah, you're the director. Well, we won't name names. Told me just to leave it. And I was like, oh, no, we're gonna redo that lighting cue. So we redid it, but it was a fight. And I was like, it was my first sort of experience with dealing with that kind of male dynamic. I'd never experienced that. I'd never experienced that in college. I'd never experienced that. I had been on movie sets before, never. That was sort of the first time. But,
the lack of consent.
Yeah. Yeah, and it came out, I had forgotten about it actually until this whole thing that came out with The Last Tango in Paris, about sort of how they had, gotten this performance out of her, and it sort of reminded me, oh God, I forgot about that.
Isn't it funny how when those things happen,
just
in the moment, you just kind of move past it because you can't really take in what's happening, and you certainly can't name it, and you're certainly not going to call out that director, and you're 20-something, right?
Yeah.
And then something happens a few years later,
Right.
and you're like, holy crap.
Yeah.
That was completely different.
It was shocking, and I didn't know, I just didn't even, I'm always wanting to be easy to work with, and you never want to be the trouble.
You want them to like you.
Yeah, you never want to be, someone who makes trouble. But I also knew at the time that wasn't right. Even at that young age, I knew that I had enough sense to go, no, I'm going to speak up about this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you fought it.
Yeah.
For the next, and did he change it?
Yeah. Yeah.
Good for you.
Yeah.
Good for you.
And I was like, this is sort of ridiculous. And my fellow, one of my, my co-star was like, that is ridiculous. He was shocked. So I don't think it's across the board. I think it's just certain people who think that that's how you can do things. I don't think it's necessarily a man thing, but it is.
No, hopefully he learned a lesson.
Yeah.
And didn't try that on the next thing.
Yeah. Interesting. Terrible. I didn't think we were going to tell that, but yeah, that was.
Yeah, apparently we're telling all of it.
Well, I know, it's a tell-all.
Okay, so what happened next? Did you come back to LA?
I did.
And
I came back
working?
to LA. I did. I started working, and I sort of immediately jumped into advertising just because it was something that I knew how to do. And
you need a day job.
I needed a day job, and so I started writing. At the time, I was in an improv show at Improv Olympic, which is a political satire show called. It was at the time it was called Big News. Now it's called Top Story Weekly, and they still have the show. But it was so much fun. It was my first experience at writing. We were kind of pulling things straight from the headlines. It was sort of, Jon Stewart when Jon Stewart was Jon Stewart, and
Weekend Update.
Yeah, SNL. Yeah, and it was so much fun. It was so alive, and it was political, and we were turning everything on its head. And so that was my first experience at writing, really.
So you're writing and acting in it?
Yeah.
Yeah, really fun.
Super fun.
Yeah. So, and you were working your way up in advertising at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
How long did that go on?
Still going on. Yeah, I still, it's interesting. You learn so much just being in sales. And I think, especially as a producer, I've been telling my family and friends stories about, we just wrapped production on Broken Hearts Division. Mm-hmm. And, as you're producing, you have all of these things that happen. There's human capital, right? So it's people. And so there's always negotiation of different people and what people want, and can be creative differences, scheduling, everything. And so I was telling a friend sort of how I've been moving through that. And I think just working in advertising and selling, and it's all producing.
Yeah.
So
it's all related.
It's all relations. It's all how you handle people. And so I think it's similar. I mean, there's obviously different variables in entertainment and advertising, but you've got a client, you've got money, you've got messages, you've got imagery. There's a lot of moving parts in advertising, and then obviously there's a lot of moving parts in creating a show.
For sure. Okay, let's talk about your show.
Yes.
Okay, so your show is called?
It's called The Broken Hearts Division, and it's about a cop who fights crimes of the heart. Evidently, It's an absurd comedy. I was like, it makes perfect sense to me.
Like, and what's their number?
People were like, exactly. Like, Nicole, people, like, when they call the LAPD, like, there is no Broken Hearts Division. I'm like, well, there should be. And they're like, no, but there's no.
I tried calling and I couldn't get through.
They're like, it's weird, but don't worry. Like, soon there'll be a hotline.
Okay, so what kind of crimes are they going after?
Yeah, we're going after things like, our pilot was assault with a deadly text.
What'd the text say?
I can't marry you.
Oh.
Yeah.
That's not something you should text.
Right? It's just not a thing to text.
That's on the same level as the breaking up with a Post-it.
Yeah.
That's not okay.
Like, the worst place for the Post-it. Like, would it be on the fridge? Like, if you got that Post-it, I'm trying to think of,
in the bathroom.
Right, like on the mirror.
Yeah, or like some place where you're not going to find it for 3 years. Like in a drawer.
Oh, God, yeah.
It'd be terrible. Okay, so you thought...
Like on the visor. You're like, what the hell? I didn't know where he went. I couldn't find him. It was under the visor the whole time.
He ghosted me. Now it makes sense. Ridiculous. Okay, so what made you think, I'm going to put on a show?
Yeah, let's put up a show in the barn. I knew that I wanted to create something that I could control, that I could have some element of say in like what I did. Just being an actor solo was not where you have no control, where everything is at the whim of somebody else, just felt very like
awful.
Yeah.
You have no control over getting the job in the first place.
Yeah.
And then what the character is and what the writing is and
exactly. There's so many variables that you just don't have any control over as an actor, and I just never really wanted to put myself in that position 100%. But I have friends that did that after college, and they're really successful. And
I've seen you have a bunch of acting credits.
Thank you.
So you've been doing it.
I have. Yeah. People still hire me. But so I just thought, I loved Law & Order. I've always loved procedurals, and I thought, what if there was a department that would actually like bust these crimes of relationship, things that people do usually in relationship. Like, it's definitely on the way to love, in relationship, you're already dating somebody, you're married to somebody, all the things that happen kind of in the dynamics of love.
I mean, only if this were only real. Like, how many times, like, out, in the dating world in Los Angeles, which is the worst, have you, like, had a great first date and then been ghosted, or, crazy things happen and you just wish... I heard a radio show in New York where the DJ was actually calling people up after they had had a first date and didn't get a second, or after they'd been ghosted, and just saying, hey, what happened? Why didn't you ever call her again? Right? It's a whole radio segment. And if you could actually send... the LAPD out there?
Yeah, if somebody would and that's sort of the thing that the character, her name is Officer Mackenzie Merriweather. She goes by Mac, and she just wants justice. She's like, you don't get to ghost in the night. Like, there's nobody that gets to
no, not on my watch.
You know what I mean? Like, I may not be able to put you in jail, but I can at least give you a strong talking to. As we say in the South.
Yeah, is that what she does?
Yeah,
strongly worded letter.
Well, usually she's tackling them. Which, I have this great director, Scott Rogers, and, we were sort of looking at, because I've mapped out like 6 seasons. as you do. There's lots of love crimes.
Well, Law & Order's been going for 25.
I mean, come on.
So why not?
Exactly. So, and we were looking at different themes, from a season. And, this character, she doesn't ever use a gun. Like, she's definitely a bull in a china shop. But she tackles, like, water bottles, chairs, and sometimes people. But, like, she never carries a gun, It's all, But there is sort of that element of, like, what happens when people are in power. There is that kind of thing that takes over, I think, for cops, and that's why they, we see this. I don't think I hope, I like to think the best in people. They don't go in thinking they're going to do that, but when you've got all this adrenaline, you're moving, and then
the authority,
and you start going, like, that's where it happens. And I think what's so interesting is, like, one of the things that we were dealing with in the show is, expectations, right? Mm-hmm. And this particular season is about people not really professing who they are, sort of hiding their true identity. But in future seasons, we're looking at, like, the expectation and, like, when you are in a position of something, whether, you think you have the upper hand. Like, I've talked to friends of mine who talk about, like, power dynamics in relationships, like, who has the power, and that happens in dating. Like, oh, I'm not going to talk to somebody because it's going to say something about me, or I'm going to wait the whole 3-day rule. It's all a bit of a power dynamic. Yeah.
And the rules are changing all the time. Mm-hmm. You never really know what they are. I was talking to someone the other day about them dating. I was like, okay, are you following the rules, or are you following, like, which
book are you following?
Which strategy of dating are you doing?
Right.
Like, I can advise you according to your particular philosophy.
Right.
You're doing today.
Yeah, it's I think it's interesting, the dynamic of, like, what happens in a relationship. I mean, obviously the ideal is that it just flows and it's even and it's easy.
And you run towards each other on a beach.
Yeah, or, like, whatever. Like, you've got two people, so people are going to have varying degrees of, like, desire, expectation of what they want out of the relationship. There's so much to go into it, that, like, it's a wonder that, like,
that anyone gets
together. It's a wonder that anybody gets together. But people do, and but even, like, not to get too political, but, like, when you look at, like, what happened in Vegas, I think that's a person who, like, no one knows what's going on, but, like, who he is, why he did this. But I go, that's a person with that's a broken heart right there, like.
Well, we know he lost his shit.
Yeah. Yeah. And, like, what causes you to lose your shit in relationship? You know what I mean? Like, in life, right? This is somebody who's now taken a semi-automatic. But, like, how do people do that in relation? We have these highs and lows, and everybody, you've got hormones, and,
Hormones are not to be taken lightly.
They're not to be, they're for real.
Now, is Mac single?
She is.
So is she working out her personal stuff while on the job?
Yeah, we discover something about her. She got left at the altar. And she got left at the altar. And so she may or may not be working through that in this department. May have something to do with why she started the department.
She may or may not. Now, tell me, how did you pull this whole thing together? You wrote it?
I did.
And produced it?
Yep.
Did you raise the money?
I did.
How did you go about doing that?
So I greenlit the pilot myself. I just said,
let's put on a show.
Yeah. I said, if I can't believe in my own work, then who else is going to? So I sort of greenlit myself for the pilot. And then I decided I would crowdfund for the season because I just didn't want to wait, because Hollywood just takes,
forever.
It takes a long time to get things through development, and you have to find the right person, and then it's got to fit the right things at the right moment, in the right lineup. Yeah, you hit, like, it's a miracle. Fish in a barrel. So I just said, I want to build this, and I want to find the audience, and, like, start doing Facebook Lives and creating a Facebook page, and, like, letting people see what the show's about. Because I've always felt like if you can find an audience, there's something there. Yeah, and so we built this Facebook group out of people not really knowing what it was, just kind of the name. And I thought, well, that's really interesting. Like, there's something to the name.
There.
Yeah. So I planned the crowdfunding. I had a guy that sort of is an expert in that, and he helped me. But yeah, we raised the money for the budget, and so we did that in the spring of this year. 2017, and then we just wrapped production a week and a half ago.
Congratulations.
Thank you. I know, it's very exciting.
That's amazing.
It's very exciting.
So you've done a whole season?
Yeah, we shot a whole season.
And when do we get to see it?
We are in editing right now. So the plan is to get it out, what are we in, October? So the plan is to get it out in November.
Fantastic. All right, what is your greatest hope for this series?
I would love to see, I would love to see it like as an NBC show or a CBS show or a companion to one of the procedurals. But I think like Comedy Central or Adult Swim or IFC would be good places for it.
I think those would all be good homes for it.
Yeah, they understand sort of absurd humor, like Children's Hospital and.
Well, the premise is hilarious.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's really. I watched the pilot. I loved it.
Thank you.
Now, tell me this: what do you kind of make of? We talk a lot about this. The state of women in the business.
Yeah.
Today.
It's so interesting. I know so many actresses who, much like myself, were like, I'm going to write something and I'm going to produce it. And I think it's great.
Yeah.
It's so encouraging to see other women doing it. And we're all sort of, I had a great conversation with a fellow creator about like us all kind of, working to sort of raise it up. Obviously we were all trying to get our shows sold, but at the end of the day, really having support of each other and sort of helping each other guide through whether it's the festival circuit or the networks, it's just sort of knowing who the players are and getting into those, getting into the places where you can pitch and, and sell. And there's a lot of avenues. It's interesting, with CISO going under and Vimeo, I guess, had a whole mandate to support women content, female content, and now both of those platforms are gone. But then AT&T has a platform, and Verizon has Go90. There's so many.
Right. And Apple's about to.
Apple and Facebook, and so hi Facebook. We're here on Facebook.
We're doing this just like Sheryl Sandberg.
Exactly. We're just like Sheryl Sandberg. Exactly. We're leaning in.
That's right. We're leaning in.
So, I think it's about finding your audience and creating as good a work as just sort of constantly getting better. That was the thing that I worked on this year was sort of, I wrote another pilot this year and just working on getting better constantly and, honing your craft as a writer, as an actor, as a producer, just lessons just coming at you like so many life lessons and producing lessons and
like water from a fire hose.
Drinking from the fire hose, indeed.
I'm seeing a real groundswell of women bonding together, finding community, supporting each other.
Yeah.
Rising tide raises all boats. I'm seeing it like never before.
Yeah, and I think when there are more mandates that women need to be behind the camera and they need to be in the writer's room. We were talking that I had a producer tell me that women over 30-something were not going to be in comedy rooms. Like
just full stop?
Just full stop.
Well, you start with they aren't funny to begin with, and then once they're old, like 35.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
And it was like, oh, wow, this is the first time I've heard this. And
like someone said that out loud.
He said it out loud. And this is somebody who I respect and who has done well in the industry. And I was talking to another friend of mine who is also a man, and he was like, that's ridiculous. Like, there are mandates for women to be in writers' rooms and comedy rooms. So
hello, it makes it all better. The more voices you have.
Exactly. So you hope and you see different women who have production companies. They're looking for female stories. I was sitting with a friend of mine who's a male post producer, and he was telling me a story. This really great story about this guy who had gone to Russia in the 80s, right before the oligarchs had come to power, and he basically discovered this huge financial windfall in Russia. And I was listening to his story, and it was a fascinating, it was like a Grisham novel, as far as him getting out there and the finances and the Russians and
how do I discover a windfall?
And what I realized was, in his whole story, there was no female. Mm-hmm. There was not a female lawyer. There wasn't a female anybody. And he said, because you couldn't have sent a woman out there to Russia. And I was like, I get that. And but I said, I'm looking for female stories. Like, I want to hear the woman's story. And he told me a great story about Sumner Redstone's daughter, who's an attorney. And I think there was this whole legal battle about Universal going to his 40-year-old, like, no offense, but his new wife, who was like, who knows. And this woman, his daughter, was like, no, and she's an attorney, and she totally fought it, and she basically won the rights to Universal. And I was like, that's a story I want to hear. Like, I want to hear those stories. Like, I'm so interested in female stories. I love that Maggie Gyllenhaal rallied to be a producer on The Deuce, to make sure that there was like a female perspective in that story. And I saw that the director of the pilot was a woman. And
the Emmys.
Yeah.
How great was that?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, what a cautionary tale The Handmaid's Tale was, right? Is.
Yeah. The thing that bothers me about that show, because it's so good.
Good.
What bothers me is I think there may be people out there who think that's a good idea.
Yeah.
Well, and that's what's so scary about it.
I mean, that is sort of an interesting, the time we're living in is a really confounding time, because you think,
that's a good word,
to yourself, like, how could anybody, and I mean, I'll just say it, like, how could a woman vote for Trump? Like, I don't understand how a woman would be okay with that. And what I realize is, like, we live in a patriarchy. Like, it is part of the culture. And so whether you're a man or a woman, you're raised in a patriarchy. Mm-hmm. And so I was talking to somebody last night about the female, the wife who Elizabeth Moss is sort of tasked with, and that as a feminist or as a woman kind of moving through, I thought, well, isn't it interesting that she sort of moved for this change in power, and yet she's now left out of the rooms. Like,
she architected her own loss of power.
Exactly.
And then was like, wait a minute. You could see it on her face, like, that isn't exactly what I had in mind.
Right,
but okay.
And what's so interesting is, like, that you have women in our culture who kind of want to be a wife and mother, which is totally cool. But they don't necessarily want to see women who are producing or sort of rising up. And that was the conundrum I had with, some people who didn't, I don't want to get too political, but who didn't want Hillary in power. And I thought, oh, how could you not? I mean, I can see it now. I can see it from different perspectives of, like, they see her not as the kind of woman that they would want. It's not just her being a woman. And of course I was like, she's a woman, like, let her go. She's got the credentials. But I see how some women would see that. And I try and, especially as a writer and as an actor, you try and see things from other people's point of view, even though you don't agree with them. You do try and see things from their point of view. If you had to play them, if you had to be them, Because
I think the whole point is so that we can all choose to be whoever we want to be and choose to do whatever we want to do and have the freedom to choose to be a stay-at-home mom if you want to, or go have a career if you want to, or do both.
And that there's enough room for you to do that.
Right.
That there's enough opportunity. I think that's the biggest reason why there's been this idea of potentially women not supporting each other in the past, is that there was not enough room at the table. And
it's scarcity. If there's one spot, I'm going to elbow you out of it so that I can be the one in there.
Yeah, and I think, the more we create opportunity and the more we don't sort of buy into that narrative, the more opportunity happens. Right. And I know that sounds very idealistic and it could sound very sort of Pollyanna or pie in the sky, but I do believe that women working together are so much more powerful. So much more powerful.
And you know what? The data supports you. It's not pie in the sky. Like, for example, if a board of directors of a company it's something like 20 to 30% women, that's enough so that the women feel comfortable, they can be themselves, and then the company has more profit, makes more money.
Interesting.
The data supports it.
Yeah.
You just need to have more women in the room. And the more women you can pull into the room every time you have an opportunity, it helps everybody.
Right. And I think women are so good, when you look at women are so good at sort of seeing everything. I think there's such benefit to men and women, but I think having both sides in sort of every position just gives you a better lay of the land, because we see things differently than men. How we look at a landscape is we see so many more shades of gray, which is helpful when it comes to making more wise decisions, I think.
It just makes everything better. That's why I call the show The Other 50%, because so often women are treated like they're the minority, when really we're half the population.
Yeah.
We should be telling half the story should be ours, half the perspective should be ours.
Right. Well, and, it's sort of like every time we have a win, we have to really, champion each other's wins, because, there's always been it's an anomaly, oh, Pitch Perfect is an anomaly, oh, Bridesmaids is an anomaly. It's no.
Oh, Big was an anomaly.
It's not
League of Her Own was an anomaly.
Exactly. They're not, Wonder Woman isn't an anomaly.
No.
It's a good story. It's told through a female perspective. It's a female story. Badass woman. It's so inspiring for young girls. I love seeing these young girls that are, see that kind of a role model. And you were asking me if I'm going to direct, and I think what's so interesting is that I never saw female directors growing up.
Right.
That wasn't something.
It wasn't a thing.
It wasn't a thing, and so I never really saw myself in that position because I didn't have any role models. As far as who could I say was somebody that was doing it and was doing it successfully? Mm-hmm. They were there. I'm sure, TV. There's obviously some female TV directors that have been really successful, but I think, yeah.
And as we learned from one of the episodes on the podcast from a film historian, women are not taught in the canon. So when you go to film school, you're only going to learn about male directors,
right?
And so you think they don't exist,
right?
When in fact they do, and they always have,
right?
You just don't see them.
Well, and even so many writers, you think about the heyday of Hollywood in their 30s and 40s. There was all these amazing female writers. Yeah. And I didn't know
and
that.
Great roles for women.
Great roles for women in this.
They're all newspaper women, and they all talk like this.
Yeah,
but there was a lot of them.
And they were smart, and they were quick, and they were
had
wily.
jobs.
Yeah. So that's definitely it's encouraging to see, groups like yours and WIMPs, and you begin to start associating with these groups, and then other women are like, how do I get into that?
Yeah.
And it's oh, come on, it's
there's so many I'm finding out now. And I was at a thing last night. The Writers Guild has a women's committee, and they had a meeting, and I got to go to the meeting. Amazing. And it was a million women in the room. It's so incredibly supportive. Everyone went around and introduced themselves, and then if someone had a book come out, or someone just sold a script, or someone just got in development, everyone just cheered. It was so supportive. There was no feeling of oh God, you got that, now I can't get that. There was none of that.
Well, and I think, that's kind of the idea of treating each other, competition in general is a male dynamic. Mm-hmm. And I think it comes from the patriarchy. It's not a female thing. A female, from what I've seen, is a female perspective is more collaborative. It is more about the community. It is sort of tribal, yeah. Historically, it's got that element. So I think, this idea of competition goes back to a male dynamic, and it also goes back to that idea that just sort of comes under the idea of patriarchy.
Yeah. I love you keep saying patriarchy. Smash the patriarchy.
Well, it's one of those things. It's so pervasive,
yeah.
And I think it's sort of you have to name it. Mm-hmm.
And then you see it, and then you can't unsee it.
Right. It's the idea of continually naming it, and it's not male bashing. It's not. Because there's so many great guys. There's so many guys that are feminists. You know what I mean? I see so many of them. And if anything, I always try and look at the bright side, or at least the the rosier side of things, you know, I've seen male feminists come up, and you see men who are like, this is ridiculous, you know? So you get to see those men who are so in support of women's voices, so in support of women being in power. And that's really encouraging.
It's really systemic.
Yeah.
It's not about men are bad or evil, it's not that at all. It's the system that is in place that we need to really be conscious of and figure out how to make it more equal.
Well, and you know, we live in a society, I mean, we live in a racist society. You know, we live in a society where until you acknowledge the things, they just keep, like, if you just try and push it over and don't acknowledge it, that's when it just keeps its pervasive nature.
Yeah. You have to call it out.
You have to, you know, and I think I didn't even really think about it. You know, I went to an all-girls Catholic school, and I went back to speak at my alma mater in the spring of last year. Was this year? Last year. And I love my alma mater, but I went to, it's in Texas, it's Catholic, and I went to career day, and I was, I don't know why they wanted me to be the last speaker, but they did. There was like lawyers and like engineers, and
I bet you were the most entertaining.
I think that's why they had me as the end. They were like, she'll make it fun. But there was only one woman on the panel.
At career day?
For an all-girls school. And I'm like,
that's so dumb.
I think we're missing something, you know?
Yeah,
like,
did you say so?
I did, quietly afterwards. I'm not going to call anybody out, but she was like, I know this is sort of the panel that I got, and I was shocked. I was like, and the other thing is, you know, they were sort of teaching a way that was very, like, how you dress, the dynamic of how they were sort of talking about how you dress in the workplace is also very patriarchal. Navy suit, pearl earrings,
men were
flat,
describing it?
Yeah, the men and the women. You know, and it's Texas, so Texas is very conservative. It's like, you know,
big hair.
Yeah.
Pearls.
Yeah, exactly. Pearls. I'm owning my pearls. They would be so proud. But it is the idea of like how you go in as a man into the business world. Like, we do things differently. Women do business differently. And so it was just an interesting thing because I live in California. We are obviously not under, Texas and California could not be more different.
Two different countries.
Entertainment and like lawyers and doctors in the oil business is like Texas. And so it's just a very conservative culture. But I thought, oh, it's so interesting that that's what they're, you know, don't wear bright colors, don't, you know. And I thought, oh, interesting.
Interesting.
Navy. I mean, I wear a lot of navy, you know. I'm wearing pinstripes, but like, I think, okay, that's interesting. That's not also kind of a male way of dealing with business, you know.
Yeah, and is that all going to be true by the time those girls get there?
I don't know, but I think what it does is I think that it mitigates, and sort of what I was saying to them is like, how do you go out and find your voice when you're living in a culture that is coming at you in a very different way?
Here's how you be a good girl.
Right.
This, and
this is how you fit into
And then if you can find your
society.
voice somewhere down there, good luck to you.
Yeah. And it's already hard to find your voice.
Yeah.
So when everything is coming at you from a male perspective, how do you find it? It's doubly hard to find it when everything is coming at you from a different perspective. If you're coming at it from a female perspective, which you can't help being a woman.
Yeah.
How do you traverse the culture in a man's world?
Because you're other the minute you walk in the door.
Yeah, you immediately have to conform to a different way of doing things rather than a female way of doing things, you know. Yeah. Gathering consensus is a female thing, you know. Listening to you know what I mean, sort of creating a community. And that's not to say that men don't do that, but it is kind of a female way of doing business. And
so more women in the room.
More women in the room. Yeah, no, and I think it was just so interesting to talk to young women about that and how do you find your voice? Because I feel like I'm just now, you know,
me too.
You right? It's like you finally
took a long
figure
time.
out, and that's the crazy thing is when you finally figure out your voice, they're like, now we're gonna put you out to pasture.
Yeah, now you're too old.
You know what I mean? Like what? I just figured
the
it out.
irony. You know, Oprah used to say, like, once you turn 50, you get to become the woman you were always meant to be.
Yeah.
If we could figure out how to do that when we're 20,
right,
what a different world we'd
What
be
a different
in.
world, yeah. And that's, I think, what's so interesting about acknowledging these things. And I think, one of the things I was trying to figure out, why do we always try and conform? It's because when you're growing up and you're going into school, you have to get grades. You have to get things from other people to get approval to move to the next step, right? You have to get certain grades to go to the next level. Then you have to get, you have to write essays to get into college. So you have to get approval from other people. So you're always looking for approval from somebody else as opposed to approval from yourself, which is how you find your voice.
I read the most interesting article the other day, and I wish I knew who wrote it so I could give them credit. But it was that women tend to look at work the same way they looked at school. So we'll go to work, like in a corporation, go to work really hard, do the report really well, try to get the A doing our job, which is not how men get ahead in the workplace. No, it's all about finding your team and getting visible, and because you can be loud and visible and do very well in a corporation, and you never turned in a good report.
Right.
But women are there at their desk working hard.
Right.
And
looking to make it the best.
And that's not what gets you ahead.
No, it is, and it is people, and that's why it's so important to build this female network, is because that is, those are people who can share with you, like this sort of thing,
mentoring.
Mentoring and lessons learned. I've learned so many lessons from other women that were kind of going through and had already produced stuff or had already written stuff.
And women are so generous; they'll tell you.
Yeah.
Here's how I did it. Here's what you need to do.
Yeah.
That's how I did with the podcast.
And I've gotten great mentoring from men too. I've gotten it from both perspectives. But it's it's interesting because I think I know we were going to talk about pitching, and I was thinking, I've been in sales so long that that is sort of an innate part of, I think, pitching. And so when I go to these pitch fests, or when I look at sort of what they say to you to do in pitching, I'm like, oh, okay, so this is sales. You need to kind of pivot with the room. You need to kind of know what they're looking to buy. You can't sell something to somebody that they don't want to buy.
Right.
So being aware of the room, being aware of what their mandates are as a company, being aware of what certain things the buyer is interested in, really their taste, really listening to what they have to say, and intuiting where your project would fit with the things that they already want, finding out how to, I heard something about a pitch deck, and they said, have as little information as possible, get the nugget of your story, have the essence so that you can pivot based on who you're with.
That's smart.
Yeah, it's really
just
smart.
enough.
Just enough to what makes your story unique, but enough to pivot based on the buyer.
That was a good tip.
Yeah.
Did y'all hear that one? Tell me this.
Yeah.
Are you a success?
I think so, yeah. I mean, I think that it's interesting. I was talking to a friend of mine who's a very successful writer, and I won't say anything other than that, but this person was, they were at a company doing a thing that we would all in the entertainment industry would be considered to be this is an amazing job. You've made it, right? You're making good money, you're working at a network. And she's like, it's a job.
Yeah.
And I thought, here I am, I'm not making millions of dollars doing my show, but I'm in frickin' heaven. And she's like, it's the best. I'm like, she's like, you get to create your own show.
You're following your bliss every day.
Yeah.
Your work day is pretty good.
Well, he said, he said to me, he was like, you came up with this out of your mind.
Yeah.
I was like,
I created something.
I did. And it's it's important to acknowledge it and be grateful for the opportunity. I'm so grateful for the opportunity. I'm so grateful for my team. I have a great director. I have a great line producer. I have, I have a great DP who bumped us up to an Alexa, which is I kept looking in the monitor going, holy cow. I was like, this looks amazing. He's like, it's the camera. I'm like, it's amazing. You know what I mean? And he bumped us up. And I think people get on board with passion. They get on board when people are putting their heart into it. They also get on board when you're nice to them.
Yeah.
It's always good to be nice to your team. And Yeah, so I get to work with Zach. He's amazing. Like, he helps me with all the social media stuff, and so I'm just so grateful. I try and like count my blessings, because I think that's the best way to kind of get more of what you want.
It brings more blessings to count your blessings.
It does.
Are you a badass? Seems like a trick question.
It does. I mean, I wouldn't, like, it's one of those things where I'll own it. I will own that.
Good.
Like, I don't walk into a room and be like, just so you know, you're meeting with a badass. Like, just I don't want you to be,
introduce myself.
I don't want you to, like, get nervous around me, but, like, kind of a badass. Like, probably wouldn't introduce myself that way, but I will take it.
It's kind of a silent internal knowing.
Yeah, there is something, and I tell my friends who are actors, like, there's something so empowering to creating your own work. Mm-hmm. It's such an empowering thing to be like, there's these people here because I came up with an idea and, like, I had the stick-to-itiveness to, like, see it through, Like, I had this idea 8 years ago, and I shelved it. And so it was one of those things, like, it took a lot to kind of come back to it, because I had, I'm sure everybody's got, like, a project that they were like, well, I'm going to shelve it.
How'd you jump over that
hurdle?
1,000-foot hurdle.
So
be like,
therapy.
Now's the time, and I'm doing it.
So much therapy.
That's the thing, right? It really helps.
No, I knew that, it was a personal sort of hiccup that I had to get through, sort of, it's always about people, that I had to kind of get past, and there was kind of a personal dynamic that I had to get through with another person that I had sort of started the journey with, and sort of, this whole project has been a great healing thing for the two of us, even. Just the friendship. We were able to revive the friendship based on a conversation that happened when I said, look, I'm going to revive this, So even that, it even helped a friendship that had kind of also been shelved. I mean, not totally, but, people get busy in lives and families and all that. But I sort of made a decision that I was like, I'm going to take this on. I'm going to revive it. And, I believe in the show. I believe in the mission. I believe in what it's all about. I believe in finding justice for things, specifically broken hearts.
And then you found your courage.
I did. Yeah, you find your courage. Like, it's not like you find your courage on day one. Like, you kind of find your courage every time you do something. By
doing.
Yeah. Yeah, you find your courage with rewrites and finding a director that says, let's do this, It's like the little wins.
It's like every little thing, I bet, is a little affirmation.
Yeah.
Like, oh yeah, okay, someone else thinks it's a good idea.
Yeah, because
someone else is willing to do it.
I had a couple directors that were like, no, I don't get it, And you're like,
don't get it?
Yeah, how do you not get it? What's there to
dumb?
Get? But this one director that I was really interested in the beginning, when he saw what we had done, he's like, you fixed all the things that I had bumps on, and he's like, you guys did it. He was like, it's great.
Yes.
So it was like this validation of like, believing in things. You always hear these stories where people go, oh, so many people said no.
Yeah. Took me 10 years.
Yeah. You hear these stories, and then you go, oh, yeah, like I have those stories too. Mm-hmm. Like in this story, I had people say, I don't get it. I don't know why you're doing it. I don't, like, why would there be a division for this? But what's interesting is, like, people go, you can't call the LAPD, but you should. But what's interesting is, like, people will say, nobody's been like, that's ridiculous, it'll never work.
Yeah.
They just say, I don't think that's what you should do. Like, I don't think
I can't imagine doing it, therefore you probably shouldn't do it.
Right. Because I think, like, I've even had people who were like, I don't think you should do a procedural, or people don't like procedurals, which we know is crazy.
People don't like Hello CBS.
Hello, exactly.
Their whole lineup.
So I think people say that, and then it's not like you go out to prove people wrong, but like when you keep pushing things forward, it's like it becomes a reality. You create a reality.
People don't know.
Yeah, no one knows.
No one knows anything.
No one knows anything.
The more I find out, the more I realize nobody knows anything.
Well, like, it's so interesting because I was talking to somebody about VR, and I was like, "What do you think about VR?" And he said, He goes, I don't think it's going to be a thing, because when everybody's sinking money into something that they think is going to be a thing, it's never a thing. It's always a thing that nobody thinks is a thing. Like Tinder, like Facebook. These things became things. It's not like everybody sunk a bunch of money into it. Like one guy sunk a bunch of money into Facebook. But it's not
like remember when every movie was 3D?
Yeah.
I was like, let me count the days till this is over.
Right.
Like I hated it.
Yeah. Like, ultimately, people want stories. They want to connect with people. They want stories that they can get on board with. They
want to feel something.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What advice do you have for a young woman just starting out and coming up?
I would say do anything to find your creative voice or vision, because I think that was something that I wish was told to me, especially vision as a director when you're looking at things, you know. For everything you do on the set, you become better at the other things that maybe you started. Like, now that I've produced, I'm a better actor, because I know, like, I so appreciate actors who just, like, do their job super well and, like, don't bug me. You know what I mean? You know what I mean? Like, they
keep yourself contained.
Like, do your thing.
And you're watching the edit.
Yeah.
So now you know
what it looks like. Yeah, exactly. On the camera. And then, you know, being a producer or even being in the editing bay, you look at for your writing. You go, oh, we don't need that scene. We're not going to need that scene. That's not going to end up on the edit. That'll end up on the editing room floor. Like, what is the thing that really makes this show what it is? So, you know, going into the editing, you go, okay, you start seeing what you do. And then even when you go into the editing, you look at, like, what shots do you need? Like, I was talking to a friend of mine, and we were talking about cuts, what you need, the kind of footage you need, the kind of coverage you need. And you go, oh, wow. Like, when you're writing, you can think in story angles. You can think in color. Like, we had a costumer who I found on Wimps who was lovely, and she gave me a color palette. I was like, oh, my God, people actually do this? Like, they have a color palette?
Design.
Oh, my God, this is why you have a costumer. You know what I mean? Like, I had a situation with my casting director who's amazing, and for whatever reason, we couldn't work together on this. But now I know I really want a casting director. You know, like, you start, sometimes when you have to pull things back because of budget or whatever, you go, oh, now I know why I want that.
And why you don't want to do everything yourself.
Exactly. Oh my God, were you there with me 3 weeks ago? Because that's exactly what I was thinking.
I set up the lights and the cameras. And
like, there should be people for this. But, you know, you do it because sometimes you have to do it. And I usually find you're better for it. So
What better way to learn?
What better way to learn? Yeah. I would say, you know, I mean, I used to make fun of YouTubers, and I have so much respect for YouTubers. Like, they put out stuff consistently. Like,
they work hard.
They work hard.
Yeah.
You know? And, like, do I think the quality is what I would want? No, but, like, for
but
some
do they
of
have
them,
1 million followers?
But they do the work, and, like, consistently. And I have to, anytime somebody is, like, doing the work, I have so much respect, you know?
Yeah.
And I think people in town, you know, when now I've shot something, people have respect for that. Like, I get to talk to fellow showrunners as a showrunner.
Yeah.
Because I've done the things that showrunners do. I've thought about an arc. I've thought about character. I've thought about a world, you know. I've done the things that you do when you create a show. So, yeah, I think depending on what the young woman wants to do, I would say if you want to be a director, like storyboard or you know, find the different disciplines, but figure out what it is that you want to say. Like, what is the world that you want, and how would you want your vision to change it? That I wish somebody had said to me early on. I think I had a version of that when I was younger. But it gets, you know, sometimes it shifts.
Yeah, I love that. How are you going to influence the world?
Yeah.
Rather than waiting to get picked to be in something.
Exactly.
It's a different attitude.
And when women have their vision, it is a different, the way you tell a story is differently. And the more stories that we have that are told by women, the more young women get to go, oh, this is a story told by, you know, this woman. Or
maybe I can tell my story too.
Exactly. Like, it's a valid way of looking at the world. And, you know, you're not just somebody who is in service to a man's story. You are creating a new narrative for other women coming up. And I think that is so worth it. Like, I feel like encouraging that in other women is, like, so worth it.
So women can be whole people.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good.
Yeah.
Should we look and see if there are any
Are there comments?
Participants?
We had a couple questions. I don't know if they're still on the feed. Someone wanted to know if you guys are Diablo Cody fans.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Huge time, yeah.
Can you hear, Zach? Someone asked if we're Diablo Cody fans.
We are fans of Diablo Cody.
Who isn't?
We also just had a comment from Sherry. She said she went to the symposium, How Latinas Experience Hollywood, and one of the female directors made a comment about the fact that we are responsible for the women who come after us to be better, because if we fail, then they'll say, well, that's the last time I hire a woman.
Yeah.
And men don't experience the same thing.
Yeah. That is so true. And someone said something last night that was... young women and all the women should be interested in the careers of all the women at whatever stage of life they're in. If you're a 20-year-old woman, you should still be very concerned about what 60-year-old women are experiencing.
Because you're going to be a 60-year-old woman.
You're going to be a 60-year-old woman. And you may not be ready to retire, and you want those doors open so that you can have a career your whole life.
Yeah, and I think that is so true about young women. I think, and I think we all have that. We have this like chutzpah when we're young and like, oh, I'm going to do it better than they did it before. But it's like, I think it's so important to be respectful to people who have been around for, decades and have, you do want that respect when you're that age. Like, I always feel that way about
We have experience.
Yeah, and just to honor that and... I mean, I think it was it Zoe Kazan's mom, Robin Sweetcord? Is it Sweetcord or Swycord? Do you know who she is?
I don't know.
She created Wakefield. She wrote and directed Wakefield. And, she was like, here she is. She's, a fantastic director, and it took her 10 years to get another project. Like, if we don't highlight that, that's going to happen to other women.
It happens to women all the time.
It happens to women all the time. But if we don't make a point to go, that's not right.
Right.
Then it just keeps happening. So I think it's important to showcase these women because you don't want it to happen to you. You don't want to have that lesson be something you have to learn.
Right. If you're directing films, you want to direct one every year or every other year.
Right.
Not once every decade.
Right.
Of your life.
Or you hear these stories where it's like, oh, they were difficult. Like, I think the creator of Smash, somebody said she was difficult. And it's like...
I loved Smash.
Yeah, and they just sort of discounted that. And
I want to hear specifically what behavior did she demonstrate that was labeled difficult?
Right.
And would it have been had a man behaved the same way?
Because, I mean... There's so many stories of men behaving badly, like...
And getting their next job.
So it's like, I think there is I'm not saying anything that anybody doesn't know, but this idea of a double standard, for women and how they speak and whether it's,
You have to be impeccable.
Yeah. You can't be too strong, but you can't be indecisive. And, it's like, my God, this is like... putting your, a camel through a keyhole. It's like...
There's a lot of things to worry about besides doing the work.
I think it's a matter of just like allow these people to do their work. And
I think as we have more and more examples of women doing it, there will be a broader spectrum of how we can all behave.
Well, and let women also make mistakes. Let women also have, you know what I mean? Like, let us make mistakes. Like, the only way you get better is to make mistakes.
We don't let ourselves make mistakes.
Exactly. Make more mistakes. Because I think I heard, Fish Called Wanda. What is her name?
Jamie Lee Curtis.
Jamie Lee Curtis said, as long as you're making new mistakes, like, just keep making new mistakes. I was like, I am on board with that. Yeah. You know what I mean?
She's the same one over and over again.
Maybe not the same one over and over again. Like, make new ones.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that.
I know. It's a good one. So make more mistakes. And I think that's the thing is that I think I waited because I didn't want to make a mistake.
Yeah. Let me wait till I know I can do it perfectly.
Exactly.
And then I'll start.
No, exactly.
Good luck.
And then you're going to still make mistakes. So just keep doing it.
Yeah.
Do
it.
Yeah.
Till it's no big whoop.
Exactly. You don't make it a big thing that you are learning lessons or making mistakes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Is there anything we didn't talk about that you wanted to talk about?
No, I feel like we talked about a lot.
I think we got it all.
Yeah, I think we had a good conversation.
All right, thank you so much.
Thank you.
You've been listening to The Other 50%, A Herstory of Hollywood. I'm Julie Harris Walker. I'd like to thank Nicole Feenstra for sharing her story, and special thanks to Jay Rowe, Danny Rosner, and Allison McQuaid for the music. Please find us on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, or Podbay, and subscribe and leave a review. And of course on our website, theother50%.com, all spelled out, for added features, bios of our guests, and the merch. And you can now see us on YouTube, where you can see this entire interview on video. You can also follow us on Facebook and Twitter at Other50%, and on Instagram at Other50% Podcast. And don't forget to check out The Other 50%, A Herstory of Tech. Thanks for listening. See you next time.